Corath Station's commerce deck lived in a permanent half-light, as if the place had given up on mornings altogether. Neon advertisements stuttered and blinked along the corridor, pink, acid green, and bruised violet, casting everything in the tired glow of a city that never slept because it never truly rested. The air smelled like frying oil, overheated circuitry, and a faint metallic tang of recycled oxygen pushed through filters that hadn't been cleaned on schedule. Voices layered over one another, sharp bargaining, laughter that didn't quite reach anyone's eyes, and the sing-song cadence of a dozen languages run through cheap translation implants. Anthony Wolfe liked it here, not because it was pleasant, because it was crowded, anonymous, and indifferent. On the commerce deck, nobody stared for long. Nobody asked why a human man in a patched flight jacket paid in untraceable credit chips. Nobody wondered why he kept his head down and his shoulders set like he was bracing for impact. The universe had catastrophes to manage it didn't need. To solve the mystery of one washed-out veteran buying powdered milk substitute for a kid. At 43, Anthony looked like the kind of man who'd made a career out of surviving things that should have killed him. Gray threaded through his hair in rough streaks, and his face carried the map of old choices lines carved by sleepless years and decisions you couldn't undo. His jacket had been repaired so many times the seams looked like a constellation chart. Under it, he wore an olive work shirt with the docking bay maintenance insignia, the uniform of the invisible, a job that paid in quiet credits and demanded nothing but silence. Silence he could do. "Daddy," Penny said, tugging his sleeve with the confident insistence of a small gravitational field. "Can we get the purple ones?" She pointed at a display of Voluvian candy spheres, neatly stacked in transparent cylinders. The purple ones shimmered faintly, as if they contained their own internal starlight. Penny had turned 7 3 months earlier, and she possessed an almost supernatural talent for detecting sugar. At range, her blonde hair was pulled into pigtails that bounced when she moved. Her light gray jacket hung a little loose, bought a size up to stretch time and credits as far as possible. Her sneakers pulsed with soft cyan light from embedded lead strips, leaving flickers along the floor when she shifted her feet. A backpack sat between her shoulder blades, a cartoon stelophoant, smiling broadly, trunk raised like it believed the universe would always make room for joy. Anthony's mouth tried to stay stern and failed. "One bag," he said. "Small." Penny tilted her head, already calculating. "The medium is basically the same price. It's better per unit." He stared at her for a moment, caught between exasperation and pride. "Where did you learn to talk like that?" Penny's grin widened in a way that reminded him painfully of someone he'd lost. "I learn things." Anthony sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Medium. But that's dinner dessert and breakfast dessert." "Deal," Penny declared, and stuck out her hand with the solemnity of a diplomat concluding a treaty. He shook it. Her fingers were warm and small, and the simple weight of that handshake made him feel absurdly like the luckiest man in the galaxy, even while she relentlessly worked on bankrupting him one candy sphere at a time. They were standing inside Magda's provisions, though shop was generous. It was a converted cargo container wedged between a tattered parlor and a storefront advertising probability enhancement services in flickering, unreadable script. Inside, shelves bowed under the strain of goods from worlds Anthony couldn't pronounce, organized by a method only the owner understood. Magda Feltz ran the place with the stubborn endurance of someone who'd outlived history. Tyrellian, green-skinned and tall even without the elaborate coils of silver hair piled on her head. She wore ceremonial scarification marks that caught the neon light. Her many-faceted eyes could look affectionate and dangerous at the same time. An old woman who'd survived 3 husbands, 2 uprisings, and 1 economic collapse without ever surrendering her space to anyone. When Penny carried her candy to the counter, Magda's expression softened. "Little penny flower," she said, her voice rough like sun-baked stone. "You brighten an old woman's evening." From beneath the counter she produced a small wrapped sweet and slid it toward Penny. For excellent taste, Penny accepted it like a sacred artifact. "Thank you, Miss Magda." She tucked it into the secure pocket of her backpack, the one reserved for treasures. Anthony gathered the rest of their necessities. Milk substitute, nutrition bars, the cheapest protein, packets on the shelf. Their home on level 31 wasn't much to rooms and a shared sanitation unit down the corridor. But it was clean, quiet, and most importantly, forgettable. 3 years of being nobody. 3 years of staying alive. He intended to keep it that way. He was counting out chips when the temperature in the room changed, not literally, but in the way his instincts pricked, the way the air seemed to tighten around certain footsteps. Devon Cray walked in like a man who'd never been told no. He wore a tailored jacket that looked like it had been designed to shame anyone who'd ever sewn. Patch by hand, his hair was styled into effortless perfection, and his smile came preloaded with entitlement. Grothian bodyguards followed him inside, ducking through the doorway, reptilian faces, scales catching the light in muted bronze and green. Their eyes were flat, professional, muscle hired to make problems vanish. "Magda, Magda, Magda," Devon said, drawing out her name like it tasted amusing. "How many times do we need to have this conversation? The premium protection package isn't optional. It's good business." Magda straightened until she seemed to fill the cramped shop. "I paid your father's organization for decades," she snapped. "I paid your cousin when he inherited the racket. I will not pay a 3rd generation of Cray parasites to protect me from dangers the Cray family manufactures." Devon's smile didn't falter, but something cold flickered behind it. "Parasites?" he repeated, strong language for someone whose inventory could suffer unfortunate mishaps. Anthony's hands went still for half a beat. Penny, sensing the shift, drifted closer to him. "Don't look. Don't speak. Don't matter." He gathered the groceries, trying to turn his body so he could shield Penny without drawing attention. Magda could handle herself. She'd been fighting people like Devon Cray longer than Anthony had been alive. Then one of the Grothians noticed Penny peeking around Anthony's leg. The creature's mouth stretched wide, teeth serrated in a way that might have been a grin on his species. "Human little one," he rasped in heavily accented standard, so delicate. Penny made a small sound and pressed into Anthony's side. The Grothian made a wet, rattling chuckle and elbowed his partner, fragile like shell-less eggs. The second Grothian leaned in, eyes narrowing with crude amusement. "More like those small pink snacks," he said, searching for the word. "Shrimp." Penny's voice came thin. "Daddy, are they going to eat me?" Something in Anthony broke clean and final, like a snapped bone. He turned toward them, and when he spoke his voice wasn't the tired murmur of a docking mechanic. It was the voice of a man trained to end fights before they began. "No," he said. "They're not going to do anything except apologize to my daughter and leave." Devon Cray's attention finally landed on him. His eyes skimmed Anthony's worn clothes, calloused hands, and the maintenance insignia, and he looked amused. "I'm sorry," Devon said, as if to the room itself. "Did the help just speak?" "The help," Anthony replied evenly, "is asking your employees to apologize for frightening a child." Anthony stepped forward, placing himself between Penny and the Grothians. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "The polite version is ending," he added. "Choose your next move carefully." Devon laughed. "Delighted. This is incredible. A dock worker thinks he can." The first Grothian lunged, fast, reaching for Anthony's collar. The next second and a half unfolded with brutal efficiency. Anthony shifted his weight and redirected the grab, rolling the Grothian's momentum into a joint lock that folded the reptilian arm at an angle it was never meant to achieve. The guard hit his knees with a hiss before the second bodyguard could react. Anthony swept his legs and sent 200 kilos of scaled muscle crashing into a shelf of preserved vegetables. Jars shattered. The container's floor rang with impact. Then Anthony stood exactly where he'd started, breathing only a little harder, hands open and relaxed. "Apologize," he said conversationally. "Leave." Devon's face flickered through shock. Then fear, then something worse. Calculation. His hand slid toward the inside of his jacket, and Anthony's instincts screamed. But the shop's door blew open before anything else could happen. "Station. Security." A voice snapped. "Nobody move." An officer strode in with a pulse weapon held ready. Thelosian, tall, lean, azure skin with a faint luminescent sheen. Golden hair was braided tight in regulation style. Her eyes yellow-green swept. The room with the practiced precision of someone who'd learned how quickly chaos became blood. Her armor marked her as Enforcement Division. The weapon's setting was not subtle. Devon transformed instantly. The predator vanished, replaced by a trembling victim. "Thank the stars," he exclaimed, pressing a hand to his chest. "Officer, this man attacked us. Look at my security team. We were just shopping and he went berserk. He's probably intoxicated." The officer's gaze moved from the groaning Grothians to Anthony, who stood very still with his hands visible. Her eyes paused on Penny, whose face crumpled as she began to cry. Clutching Anthony's jacket with both fists, "Sir," the officer said, voice firm, "step away from the child. Hands behind your back." Anthony swallowed. "Please," he said, and his voice cracked around the word, "not in front of my daughter. I can explain." "You can explain at the station," she replied, not unkind, but unmoved. "Hands. Now." Anthony looked down at Penny. Her cheeks were streaked with tears, small body shaking. She didn't understand why safety kept slipping away, why strangers kept trying to take things from them. He knelt slowly so his eyes were level with hers. "Hey," he murmured, "Penny Bird, look at me." She forced her gaze up to his. "This is a misunderstanding," he said. "The officer is going to ask Daddy questions." "Then I'm coming back," Penny sniffed, trying to breathe. "You remember the protocol?" he asked. They'd practiced it too many times what to do if Daddy didn't come home right away. Where to go? Who to trust? Penny nodded. "You stay with Miss Magda," he said. "You're brave. You're smart. And I promise you, I will come back." Behind him, the officer's patience thinned. "Sir." Anthony stood and turned, placing his hands behind his back. Restraints clicked around his wrists. Cold, familiar, humiliating. When the officer took his arm to guide him out, her fingers brushed his sleeve and pushed the fabric up his forearm. She froze. Ink stared up from his skin, a shield enclosing. The number 16 in stark black. Beneath it, 2 words in block letters. "Hold fast." The officer's grip loosened as if her hand had forgotten how to hold. Her blue skin paled towards something almost powdery. And the sound she made wasn't professional at all. It was a sharp, involuntary inhale. The gasp of someone who'd just seen the impossible. "Selka," Devon barked, irritation slicing through his false fear. "Officer Selka Vaughn, what are you doing?" "Arrest him." Selka didn't answer. Her eyes stayed on the tattoo, on the words. A memory flared in her mind. A dim hospital room. Her father's voice worn down by pain, but steady with conviction. "If you ever see that mark, Selka, you remember what it means. You remember what they did when everyone else gave up. Unit 16 saved my life." Her father had been a diplomatic courier trapped during the Vidian blockade. 11-year-old Selka had been certain she'd never see him again. And then he'd come home scarred, broken, alive because a team of human operators had carried him through hell. Selka's hand trembled against Anthony's arm. Anthony noticed. Of course he did. He turned his head slightly and met her stare with eyes too old for his borrowed identity. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said quietly. Selka's voice came out low. "We're going to the station. I need to review the evidence." Devon's smile twitched. "What evidence?" "You saw him assault my men." "I saw 2 individuals on the ground," Selka said, training snapping back into place. "And I saw witnesses. Standard procedure. Requires documentation before charges. Mr. Cray, my family funds this station's security budget." Devon hissed. 3 generations. "Don't embarrass yourself." Selka's gaze didn't move. "Then your family is paying for a thorough investigation." She nodded to Magda. "Please keep the child comfortable until supervision can be arranged." Penny's scream followed them out like a knife. "Daddy, don't take my daddy." Magda caught Penny in strong arms, holding her back while the girl sobbed and kicked. Anthony didn't look over his shoulder. Looking back would break him. And broken men didn't keep promises. In the transport pod, Neon smears slid across the window as they moved through the station's arteries. Selka sat opposite him, posture rigid, hands folded like she was holding herself together. Finally, she spoke. Unit 16 was disbanded 12 years ago. Official records say it never existed. Anthony stared at the pod floor. Then, "It's a strange tattoo. The Vidian blockade," Selka said, voice dropping. "The diplomatic vessel Serenity's Grace. 23 hostages, including a Thalosian courier named Corath Vaughn." Anthony's jaw tightened so subtly most people wouldn't see it. "That courier was my father," Selka whispered. Her composure cracked, and for the first time she sounded like a daughter instead of an officer. "He lived 8 more years because your people pulled him out. He died in my arms telling stories about humans who carried him for kilometers while he could barely breathe." Anthony closed his eyes. "The Serenity extraction," he murmured. "I remember him." Selka blinked hard. "He never told me. He was protecting you," Anthony said. "That's what fathers do." Silence stretched. Then Anthony spoke again, and each word felt like it had been scraped out of something buried. "Someone sold us out," he said. "Last mission, trap. Half my team died. Command buried it. Buried us. Pretended we were a rumor." He paused, throat working. "I tried to find out why. People I talked to had accidents." His voice broke on the next word. "My wife." He swallowed hard. "Her shuttle failed. Thruster malfunction. Unexplained. He laughed once. Humorless. Clear message. Stop digging." Selka's eyes softened. "So you disappeared." "I became no one," Anthony said. "Dock work. Low-level housing. Quiet routes home. Penny stays alive." He flexed his restrained hands. "I kept the tattoo. Stupid, sentimental. But it's the last piece of who I was." The pod descended toward the security complex. Selka looked at him for a long moment, then made a decision that could ruin her. "The Cray family has influence here," she said. "If Devon files a complaint, Captain Wilfred will take it personally." Her voice sharpened. "And if Wilfred gets curious about you, whatever you're hiding from will find you." She pulled out her personal communicator. "So I'm going to need truth. Witness statements, footage, anything that proves Devon started this." Anthony watched her, careful hope stirring against his better judgment. "Why would you risk that?" Selka met his gaze. "Because my father taught me honor isn't obedience. It's doing what's right when it's expensive." She let out a small breath. He learned that from a human who refused to leave a wounded Thalosian behind. When the extraction window closed, at the complex, Selka moved fast. She filed the report herself, stating an ongoing investigation that required the detainee to remain in holding instead of being processed. She contacted a forensic tech who owed her a favor, a records clerk who'd grown up near her father and still believed in decency, an old intelligence analyst who'd heard whispers of Unit 16, even when the official world denied it. Footage from Magda's shop told the story cleanly. Devon threatening an elderly shopkeeper, his guards intimidating a child, Anthony using restrained surgical force, Devon's immediate pivot the moment sirens sounded, damning. The forensic tech messaged, but the Crays have buried worse. We need witnesses willing to speak, Selka replied. Magda agreed. Then another. Shopkeeper. Then another. Fear cracked as people realized someone in uniform was finally listening. Selka brought Penny to see her father in the holding room. Penny launched herself at Anthony so hard his breath left him. She wrapped her arms around his neck and sobbed into his shoulder. I knew you didn't do anything bad, she hiccuped. I told Miss Magda. I said my daddy only hurts people who are mean first. Anthony held her like she could dissolve. Smart girl, he whispered. Bravest girl. Selka crouched beside Penny. I need to ask you something, she said. Gently. Before your dad stepped in, did Devon Cray say anything? Penny's brows furrowed as she searched her memory. He said Miss Magda should pay him tribute, she said slowly, as if the word tasted strange. Like the emperors in history vids, Selka's eyes sharpened. Tribute, she repeated. And the scaly men said I looked like food. Penny added in a small voice, I didn't like them. I don't like them either, Selka said, and stood. The decision settled into place in her chest. I'm going to make sure they can't scare anyone again. By the time station. Evening rolled around. Selka's case had become a net. Records revealed irregular transfers in the security budget payments. That didn't match any legitimate program. Communications linked Devon Cray to contacts inside the department. The pattern wasn't a lone spoiled heir. It was a network. Old, practiced, and hungry. At 21 o'clock station time, Captain Wilfred arrived. He was a heavy-set derrick, face arranged into permanent contempt, uniform decorated with medals that spoke of administration rather than courage. Officer Vaughn, he began, voice thick with authority. I have received a complaint regarding your handling of today's incident. Devon Cray is a respected citizen. His account is contradicted by footage, Selka said, cutting in before fear could talk her down, and by witness statements, including statements from his own hired guards. Wilfred's eyes narrowed. Are you accusing me of something? I'm not implying anything. Selka replied. She activated her communicator. Screens around. The room lit up with evidence. Transfers, messages, testimony. I'm stating that Devon Cray has been running extortion under the cover of family charity. I'm stating that multiple businesses have been targeted. And I'm stating that financial anomalies suggest someone in leadership has been facilitating it. The room went silent. Wilfred's expression shifted from surprise to anger to something desperate. You realize I can end your career? You can try, Selka said. But I've already sent copies of this evidence to Sector Internal Affairs, independent journalists, and whistleblower archives. Wilfred's hand drifted toward his sidearm. Three things happened at once. Internal Affairs officers stepped through the back corridor, weapons raised. The records clerk trembling, but determined, and locked Anthony's holding room. And Penny walked straight up to Captain Wilfred, planted her glowing shoes on the floor, and looked up at him with the fearless clarity only children possess. My daddy says bad people win when good people are too scared to tell the truth, she said. I'm not scared of you. Wilfred stared down at her. His hand fell away from the weapon. Something in him sagged not defeat, exactly. But the exhausted realization that his shadows had finally run out. The arrests took hours. Devon Cray was caught trying to flee at a private shuttle dock. Expensive jacket torn. Arrogance dissolved into sputtering rage. His guards cooperated when they learned their contracts didn't cover conspiracy charges. Names fell out of the data. Then more names. And buried deeper, Selka found references that made her blood run cold. Unit 16, cleanup operations. Targets, she showed Anthony at Dawn's simulation. When the station lights shifted toward artificial morning, they weren't just hiding a botched mission, Selka said. They were eliminating witnesses to crimes that never officially happened. Anthony sat in the break room with Penny asleep in his lap, her head heavy against his chest. He looked like a man who'd been holding his breath for years and didn't know how to exhale. "My wife found something," he said softly. "She never told me what. She was trying to protect me." His eyes lifted to Selka. "Now we can find out." Selka nodded, exhaustion etched into her face. She reached across the table and rested, her hand over his tattoo. "Hold fast," she said. "Don't let go even when the universe tries to shake you loose." Anthony glanced down at the faded ink. It was a reminder, he admitted. "For the days I couldn't remember why, I kept going." Selka managed a small, warm smile, then considered today a reminder. 3 months later, Corath Station was different. The Cray family's grip collapsed under investigation after investigation. Magda's provisions expanded into the unit next door, and Magda hired 2 assistants to manage the customers who wanted to spend credits somewhere honest. Anthony moved out of level 31 into quarters with Windows Reel 1 showing. The stars, his new job, community liaison for displaced persons, wasn't glamorous, but it fit. He understood danger. He understood systems. He understood how to help people find safe passage when the world wanted to forget them. Most of all, he no longer had to pretend he didn't exist. On a Tuesday evening, Anthony picked Penny up from her new Schoolan Academy, where children of 12 species traded homework complaints and invented new games in the courtyard. Penny talked non-stop about comparative linguistics and her friend, Zara, who had 3 eyes and thought human facial expressions were hilariously under-equipped. "And Miss Selka invited us to dinner," Penny added, skipping ahead so her shoes left faint light trails. "She's making lasagna." Anthony smiled. "Lasagna is a brave choice." Penny looked back with a grin that suggested she knew. Something he didn't. She said she only sort of burned it. They found Selka waiting in the public gardens beneath the transparent dome. She was out of uniform, wearing a casual jacket the color of her eyes. When Penny reached her, she threw herself into Selka's arms. "Oof," Selka laughed, steadying her. "Careful, little comet. I need these ribs. Daddy said we can." "Come," Penny announced. "Lasagna is the layered one, right?" "It is," Selka said. "And I only slightly singed the edges this time." Her gaze lifted to Anthony over Penny's head, and something passed between them, quiet gratitude, unspoken understanding, the promise of time. As Penny pulled out her tablet to show Selka a star map assignment, Anthony fell into step beside Selka along the garden path. Under trees transplanted from Earth decades ago. "Thank you," Anthony said quietly. Selka arched a brow. "For dinner, I'm improving." The smoke detector only complained twice. For everything, he corrected. "For believing me when you didn't have to. For being here." Selka was silent a moment. Then she said, "My father used to tell me the universe doesn't owe anyone a happy ending. But sometimes if you're lucky you meet people who remind you why hope matters." She glanced at him, eyes bright. "I think you're one of those people, Anthony Wolfe." He exhaled, something in his chest loosening. "Funny," he said. "I was about to say the same." Penny turned, saw the way they were looking at each other, and beamed with the satisfied certainty of a 7-year-old who had decided adults were slow learners. "Are you going to kiss her yet, Daddy?" she asked loudly. "Because Zara says the romantic interest thing is when you stare for more than 6 seconds. And you've definitely been doing that." Anthony felt heat rush to his face. Selka's azure skin darkened toward indigo. "Your daughter," Selka said, trying and failing to sound stern, "is terrifying." Anthony muttered, "She gets it honestly." Then, because Penny was watching and Selka was smiling, and the evening felt soft with possibility, he reached for Selka's hand. Her fingers were cooler than his, textured faintly like fine leather. They fit with his as if they'd been meant to, as if this kind of belonging was a thing you could relearn. "There," Penny announced, satisfied. "Progress." Selka laughed, bright and unexpected, and Anthony found himself laughing too. They walked on through the garden's 3 figures stitched together by circumstance, choice, and the strange chemistry that turns strangers into family. Above them, real stars burned beyond the dome, ancient light traveling impossible distances to arrive at exactly this moment. Anthony's tattoo remained hidden beneath his sleeve. 16. Hold fast. He had held on through loss and hiding and years of being nobody. He'd held on for his daughter when the universe tried to shake them loose. And now, finally, he could hold on to something new. Not a perfect ending, not a finished story, a beginning messy, uncertain, and absolutely worth fighting for. "Daddy," Penny called, racing ahead. "You're walking too slow. The lasagna will get cold." "Heaven forbid," Selka called back, dry. "I only moderately burned it." Anthony squeezed Selka's hand once, then let go to chase his daughter. "Last one there has to eat the singed edges." Penny shrieked with laughter and sprinted. Selka accused him of cheating with unfair human leg length. Anthony scooped Penny up and swung her onto his shoulders, her glowing shoes painting brief arcs of light through the air, under a dome holding back the infinite dark. In a garden made of transplanted dreams, something improbable took root, and for tonight, that was enough. That was everything.